pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Austriaco? Here. Collins? Here. Coyle? Here. Lee?
Here.
Owen? Mrs. Abramson? Wessler? Any public comments? All right. Mary? Oh, okay. Oh, okay, go ahead.
So as part of our passage of e-learning and the adoption of an e-learning program in District 207, one of the requirements is to have a public hearing. That actually is currently waived at the moment, given the circumstances, but we decided to go ahead and let's have it anyway. We'll probably do front our next meeting in April with this as well, because once adopted, this actually will carry us forward. So it won't be kind of a special dispensation just for the current, to deal with COVID-19. So we thought, let's go ahead and do this, then we can get it over to the ROE, they can review it to make sure it passes. I'm pretty confident we haven't missed anything, as I've been working with the superintendent of Northbrook ROE to ensure we had all the pieces we needed. So with that, I'll just go through quickly. Feel free to ask any questions as we go. You did get a packet. Just a little bit of background. E-learning became available at the start of this year broadly through Public Act 101-12. One of the things that have helped us quite a bit is that we've been ahead of the curve in e-learning for a very long time. 2007, we're Google's first K-12 partner. We've been involved for years beta testing with ed tech companies. So our teachers are really prepared, as are our kids, to interact with educational technology. And then in 2018, we launched our blended learning pilot, for which a lot of the techniques and strategies that you use in e-learning are a part of blended learning. So we've had over 200 teachers now involved in blended learning training over the past 2 years, which will really pay dividends now, because it's really the way that our students are going to interact when they're out of the classroom with our curriculum. So e-learning is not new in District 207, it's kind of our thing in 207. So requirements, these are the things that you have to make sure you tend to when you have e-learning. Access, and so our access you're very familiar with. One-to-one Chromebooks, Google Apps for Education, which includes like Google Classroom, which is how we push out a lot of our assignments and lessons. We have mobile hotspots. One of the things that we did to ensure access is that each year, whether you remember this or not, you tick a box whether you have home Wi-Fi. That came in very handy this year because we were able to quickly identify the families we felt did not have Wi-Fi at home and engage them to get them a mobile hotspot. We've also ordered 47 more, which should be in, I think, tomorrow or Wednesday for anyone who should need that. But the counselors actually got to the students who we knew needed help and got them those hotspots before they left last week.
And it's provided for free.
Yes.
Something we've been doing for probably going on close to 10 years. We've actually had partnerships with Sprint and other companies. And in fact, in some years, we've done it as a function of the foundation where we've done fundraisers and people would pay so that our kids, we've been tracking this since the onset of cloud computing, but right now we're at about 98% connectivity, so it's closing the gap for those last 2% of kids, as good as anybody in America, especially in a district like this.
And so we continue to communicate via email, and then also we have non-electronic materials as well. So students who didn't have access or won't have access, a lot of our teachers had run off some things for them to make sure that they were able to engage in learning while not in school. For instruction, the Public Act requires a 5-hour instructional day. So what we've done is that we have a typical 50-minute lesson prepared for students. And that can be anything. That can be videos, that can be Google Docs, sharing things back and forth. And we post those each day by 9 a.m. There's a daily assessment, and that can be a very simple thing. It might just be a short, brief response, something of that nature, and that's actually how we're gonna take attendance, and I'll talk about that in a second. And then teacher availability. Teachers have set up hours where they're available to students via email. We've had some teachers talk about actually, posting a virtual lesson, and then you can actually do Google Meet platform, interact in real time with students if they would want to. For attendance, we did, yes.
Before we move on to
Yeah.
attendance, so for instruction, so 50-minute lessons, and you said it'll be a 5-hour instructional day. How is that gonna work though with these 8-hour or 7-hour schedules?
It's, well,
So we give the students 2 days, sort of it kind of gets that 2 days to complete each assignment. So the reality is that some students are gonna be at home with siblings or have other responsibilities, or maybe even be sick themselves. And so one of the things that we're allowed to do is give a window of time that's not just that day to complete assignments. So in theory, every day we have an e-learning day, you have 2 days to complete that particular assignment. Most of our kids have 6 classes, so if they get an assignment for each of these, we've met the 5 clock hour rule.
Oh, so 5 is the minimum?
5 is the minimum,
Okay.
yes.
I see.
So you could go to school 5 hours every day, and that counts for the state of Illinois. We just happen to have a longer school day.
and just so you know, right now, the discussions going on right now frankly, at the governor's level, this is sort of the plan before coming into a pandemic. I would expect that if this is what we're hearing, which is a long-term shutdown, that they're actually going to, they're going to change the guidance on this. And they're going to give even more flexibility in this.
And these are, I was sort of misinterpreting this, these are just the requirements, these are not specifically what we're doing.
That's what the language currently says on e-learning plans, but the problem is, there's a whole bunch of subtext with this, but for the sake of expediting this meeting, here's what is happening right now, is there's discussions around these elements, and in all likelihood, we will end up actually getting relief along the lines of, because the whole concept of 50 minutes to do something doesn't, if your kid can do something in 20 minutes or 30 minutes, that should actually be the thing, and who's going to police it anyway? So I expect that we're going to get some relief on this kind of language.
Thank you.
But for us to get approved for the board, that's for the ROE. So and then it's the normal process for reporting student absences. So if your child's sick, you just call on the attendance line. We know then that on that day, when we run a report for that e-assignment, if you didn't do it, it crosses with the attendance, and the student is excused and given extra time to complete the assignment. When will we be using it? Pretty broadly. Right now, obviously, we're in a national emergency, so that is one reason, but in the future, you can use these for inclement weather, when you're in emergency situations. I could potentially see us, as you had your meeting on construction tonight, that we may build something in the future where we could leverage e-learning should construction run long, or we be in a situation where part of the building or a full building wasn't accessible, that we could still run school in the event of something like that might happen. Don't get any ideas back there, guys.
No ideas.
I got no problem.
But we've been at the forefront of educational technology for over a decade, and that really, you heard Ken mention earlier how we are really well positioned and positioned much better than most districts, and that's because of the long-term commitment that the district and the board has made to ensuring that kids are the cutting edge of technology.
On our website, under e-learning, there's a link there for our resources. It's probably the best that anybody's putting out in the country. But even in adult learning, because we coach everybody, we will be able to provide coaching in real time for our teachers should we be doing this for extended periods of time. If you think about what kind of benefit that is instructionally, it's no one's doing it.
Ken and I must be on the same wavelength, because you just explained that slide without me having to do it.
That's good. See, and I did it quicker, so that's even better.
So
We need to
anyway,
get to all these bid packages.
teacher resource, student and family resources, and things that are going on during a recess right now to ensure that kids are getting instruction and that teachers actually have a place to go to if they answer questions that they have. So we have instructional and coaching appointments that actually begin, I think, tomorrow, that Jill Geocaris will be running along with the instructional coach.
Sean, how about our students and families that don't have English as a first language? Are we doing anything to help them? I mean, like,
Those teachers, so even in an E environment, those teachers, there would be their regular teachers who already work with them in that environment will be working with them. So it won't be a foreign, new teacher to them, it'll be the same teachers that they've had all along. And whatever assistance they have, whether it's a teacher assistant or whatever, I mean, we plan to bring to bear those assistants for those students too.
so they'll be online
Yes.
I mean, would that be
And
like a
providing
set time?
support. Yes, I mean, it doesn't have to be a set time. The way that the cloud computing works is the teacher, for example, a lot of our teachers use a program called Google Classroom where they can post assignments, they can collect assignments, they can communicate with students as needed. And so whatever means they're already currently using to communicate with students, including in another language, they have the ability to do that.
And because it's online and in Google, you can use Google Translate, which helps to ease that process. Just a couple of last things, non-instructional staff. This is just when they'll be working, and this is going to vary a little bit from a normal inclement weather circumstance versus what we're currently dealing with right now. But normal shifts, maintenance, custodians, facilities directors, safety personnel, and then supervisory guidance for administrators, support staff, and food service. We'll just adjust those times as needed depending upon what our circumstance is. And then lastly, we'll have a survey at some point where we'll try and make sure that we get feedback on this, how to go, what needs to be adjusted, so if we ever have to do this again, we know what adjustments to make. So that's the overview. You have your packet, which we will be able to have Ken sign at this meeting with the resolution. You take passes, which I believe it will, and then we'll send that off to the ROE, and it will be absolutely official for us to move to e-learning when we need to.
Thank you. I do believe that we're the standard bearer in this area, and I want to thank you for your great work on it.
Thank you.
And we don't anticipate going to e-learning until we've used our 5 emergency days.
Yeah, and well, part of it gets into, it's a little bit technical, but some of it gets into what, so here's the argument right now. Pritzker used the term active God days. In most collective bargaining agreements, active God days are paid, but people aren't required to work. So that immediately became a topic du jour. So if we go to school for the rest of the year, probably what's going to happen is those days are going to be reclassified, and the term will be something like alternative learning days, so that we aren't squabbling over active God days, which have a very specific context in a lot of the CBAs across the state. So that immediately came. So, yeah.
So not at least.
For us, we would be looking for maybe the Monday, Tuesday after spring break, if we aren't back, which I would predict we won't be.
This was published in the Daily Herald on March 10th,
Yes.
correct?
So,
In pursuant to the
As
national
required.
emergency of the COVID-19. Okay, then I have a public comment. I don't have a name on here, though.
Dr. Drew Kandelakis, I'm a parent to a child here who's a junior.
Okay, so we have a 3-minute, you can come and stand and make your comments.
It's not a dissertation, just a simple question. I've met Mr. Mesmer before, had the pleasure. My question really was the format of the e-learning. As a clinician, I'm part of webinars where I either see the presenter and get a chance to remotely raise my hand and ask questions by typing in, or there's an audio track that's either group muted or individually accessible depending on what the instructor wants to do. So my question really, when they said this, and I didn't really know that I'd be the only one here, but oh well.
Brave.
I have a sincere interest in education. I'm actually in a Master's of Secondary Education program just because I love teaching. I love what I do. So my question really is about the methodology. Is it going to be a presentation in which written assignments based on topic material will be given to students with a timeline and specific questions or target learning requests? Or is it going to be an actual presentation at a scheduled time that's either recorded in advance that the student can watch for a more personal experience, and then submit some kind of questions based on what's requested of their learning module Or is there going to be an opportunity to actually have an interactive classroom remotely, kind of as a webinar? Whether the presenter is visually seen or not is not really the important part, but the ability for a student to be able to, or the classroom to be able to do what they normally do, which is respond to the instructor as a group and learn from each other's having their questions answered.
All three of those things are possible. So for example, Zoom has just opened up their format, but Google now uses instead of Hangouts, they've got a new product, and we've been using it actually to meet remotely. We had a meeting of our staff yesterday. So they've got a product now called Google Keep. So if you're on Google, when you look in your browser for your calendars, it's called Google Keep. It's very
Google
similar.
Keep?
Keep.
Google Keep.
Or excuse me, Meet, M-E-E-T.
Google Meet.
So it's really just like Zoom, so you can have up to 100 people in at one time, and our teachers are really, really
I
comfortable with
like
that.
Zoom, I'm familiar with Zoom.
Yeah, Google Meet, so that's one way that we could do it, but every question that you ask, every one of those things would be exactly the strategies that would be used. So it's not any one thing, but it's a variety of things depending on the need of the class and what the teacher wanted to push.
Okay. So my last departing comment would be that I would encourage you to encourage your instructors and teachers to have some portion of that learning to be a personal experience as much as possible. Even if one of those days out of the 4 that they meet is a start time where anybody that can make it can actually have some form of a personal experience with the teacher, that would be.
We were talking before you got here, and if you want, come in. This is a deeper follow-up conversation. So one of the things that's been top of my mind for the last few weeks, all of our students have an individual career plan. So we've been meeting with like our student services department. So if you're a counselor, you've got a caseload, your kid's got individual career plans. That's what we put in the category of personalized service. So we want our counselors, for example, having those one-to-one meetings and making sure that we are taking advantage of any time when we're not in school to work more deeply on some career experiences if we can get them. So absolutely, I'm hopeful that the governor doesn't stop school in a couple of weeks and that we actually have to do this for 8 weeks, because we'll get better at it and we'll learn and we'll do it even better the next time. So I'm hopeful that we are forced to, if schools aren't going to be a place where kids can come, that we have to continue to provide services.
Okay.
But it's, here's what I can tell you. No matter what we don't do perfectly here, we're going to do it better than pretty much anybody else, and we'll learn, and the next time we do it, we'll do even better. So that's, we're in uncharted territory.
Okay, yeah, understood. And
What are
thank
you
you
getting
for
a master's
allowing
in,
me
by
to
the
ask
way?
the question.
Thank you for your comments and.
What are you getting a master's in, by the way, to teach?
It's going to be in science, and
Good area.
I've met Dawn Bowenga, a wonderful lady, and
Yeah.
who's the fellow that's almost on retirement? He's a biology
We
professor.
got a bunch of them.
Maybe I got a
bunch
shot.
of them.
Maybe.
Howard Knodel, maybe?
Yeah, I love this guy. He's a pro.
Yeah, he is.
He's a master.
He is.
Watching a master is always a delight. So
Yeah.
I've had a chance to observe his class.
But if you want to come and talk a little bit more, just make an appointment. I suddenly have a lot of free time, so I'm available.
Wash your hands first.
Yeah,
Wash your
yeah.
hands.
We're gonna see.
Believe me, I have a onesie that goes all the way.
We'll be 6 feet apart, but anyway.
Thank you.
so much.
Thank
I
you.
really do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other public comments? No? So anything else? So otherwise we can adjourn the public hearing? Okay, we'll move on to regular special board meeting?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Sean rocked the bow tie for us.
It was nice.
Well, we don't have to take the roll,
No.
So we're going to start the notice of the special board meeting scheduled for immediately after at 4 p.m. today.
We don't have to adjourn the public hearing?
We did.
Oh, we did.
We don't have to make a motion.
Austriaco?
You're so far away. You don't know what's happening in this end of the room. Lots happening at this end.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Collins?
Mrs. Roll call for this.
Here.
Coyle?
Here.
Lee?
Here.
Owen? Yusuf Abramson? Bessler?
Here. Okay, do we have any public comments here? No. Mary, anything on the resolutions?
Sure, the first resolution is authorizing the prompt payment of bills. this resolution, both of these are presented tonight as information only. So this resolution, if passed, would, the board had contemplated not meeting in the month of July, but of course we have to pay bills in July. So this resolution, if passed before July, would detail an estimate of our expenditures for July, and then give authorization to continue to pay that, and then we would recertify that at the August board meeting and let the board knows what bills that we paid, similar to a bill list. And that would allow the board not to have to meet in the month of July, okay?
We'll decide on that at the next board meeting?
We can decide on that at the next board meeting, and actually, we can decide on that in June, and I can give probably a better estimate of what those expenditures would be in July.
And we're anticipating amendment of the Open Meeting Act too, that might change all of our future board meetings, so it'll be something we'll be able to address either virtually or in person in April. But there's something to amend the Open Meeting Act in
Only
context.
when we'd be in a state of emergency.
Only in the state of emergency, where it's virtual. Okay, so we can address it then. Anything else on that, Mary?
Nope, that's it.
Okay.
The next resolution would be a resolution regarding the approval of discretionary spending and change order related to capital projects. So, as you may have noticed from tonight's agenda, we're doing a lot of construction this summer. This resolution would authorize the superintendent to approve change orders with a dollar value of $100,000 or less, and discretionary spending of $50,000 or less, without it going to the board. Because as you can imagine, we could be doing $1 million, we could have an $80,000 change order for a site utility work, that normally anything above 10 would have to wait for the board, but we don't have the luxury of holding that work for 4 weeks and waiting for board approval. This would be subject to the budget, so that if we were to exceed the budget, including the contingencies, the superintendent could not approve change orders above that limit. So there is only this discretion within the contingency and allowances that we have within the construction project.
The question I've got, just for this particular discussion, and I think it makes perfect sense, but the question I guess is, Rob, for you, what's the probability that we might have a change order in the moment that would exceed $100,000?
Problem.
That was
Problem. Existing buildings, existing additions, existing buildings, tying in new buildings to existing buildings, and all trying to do that in a tight time frame. I don't want to sugarcoat it, it's probable.
So that's my question, and I don't know what's legally allowable. I get that the higher the number, the greater the potential risk, but we're getting ready to enter into, and frankly, if we are closed for school, one of the things we're going to try to do is take advantage of that, that we can move a little bit more quickly. But I think to this point, that would be my only concern. If anything, I would entertain maybe a discussion of, could we have a number that would be, let's say, you feel pretty safe that would cover the probability of 90-something% of all that would happen?
Yeah, I would say $100,000 is, especially if you think about it, and some of it is it's a real ripple effect. Some of these things are the same occurrence at 3 schools. So that, if it's procuring a material type, right now that same material type is changed across 3 schools, that little thing that cost you $1, once I multiply it by the square footage that we're gonna touch in each of these schools, it adds up fast. So it can be on the procurement side of life that's also a concern versus the unforeseen side. And especially,
So how do we pick the $100,000 and $50,000 threshold?
Sure, well, the $50,000 on discretionary spending is the bid limit.
Right.
So we don't really have authorization to enter into contracts greater than $50,000 without bidding them, so that's how we determine 50. The 100 is kind of a random number. It could have just as well been 150 or 200,000. We kind of took a look at all of the trade packages and what we know and thought, how much would the board be willing to give us authorization for versus how many of these could we have? And there is still a risk that we'd have a change order of greater than 100,000.
Could we have like a special board meeting then if we had to, if it went over
Yeah,
100?
Or
so-
we have to wait for the board meeting, right.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to
And that's
determine
what,
number.
yeah, because that,
No, I mean, if it went over, I mean, there's a solution if
But-
it's over 100,000.
But it might have to wait to the next board meeting, or we're gonna have to call special board meetings, and I say it might impact the flow of. so
Yeah,
we're trying to
my
design-
concern is
Let's just
like-
all, wait, let's all talk at once. So, we would have to determine if there's a better number for that, and, go ahead, Ken.
Well, I'm just, my biggest concern, Terry, is especially as we get in the summertime, is that we not be in a situation where, for something that we just don't have any control over, slows us down. We are trying to fit a ginormous project into a really tight window and be ready to open up school next year. And, you know, even if we started today, trying to get a board together could easily be a week if, I mean, you know, it's asking a lot, and a week delay. I think when Mayor and I talked about this, that was my, that's my only question about the money, is just trying to make sure that we can move as quickly as we can for unforeseen circumstances. The contract limit just applies to the contract. There is no upper limit on a bid change, correct?
Well, a change order is subject
A change
to
order.
10% of the
10%.
original contract value.
Contract.
So that's your limit.
So if you have a mechanical contractor that has a $5 million contract, which some of them are in that
Yeah.
neighborhood.
So that's your 500,000. So let me ask you this, if you were saying what, you do this for a living.
Correct.
So the probability, what do you think the range of change orders could be on a project of magnitude of ours?
So your ones that are easy we make a holistic scope change. We say, we want to build this piece, and we have time to price that piece, bring that piece to the board. That could be a $250,000 change, right? But that's out in front of the work. We have time to, because we're usually not adding a major scope of work that quickly. It's more of we run into an unforeseen condition, we need to keep moving. We vet it out with architect, owner, contractor, Dave Altman, his crew, as well as the engineers that White has, and we've come to consensus as on the same side of the table of what the value of that is, and then that's really what's coming to the superintendent for discussion. So I would say it shouldn't be the norm of $100,000, just I don't know what I don't know yet, and until we really start, you know, there's sections of the south tunnel that are deteriorated, what we found, right? So we're replacing concrete, we're leaving existing rebar in place, trying to save that existing rebar so we spend less money, but we want to take the concrete out. Now what happens when we get in there and now that tunnel's in the middle of the corridor, and now take the rebar out and the concrete out, right? So now it's like that. We got to price it.
You said earlier that you thought it was probably more than $100,000 would be typical. Do you have a range at all right now, or you're
No,
not able to do it yet? Okay, then this is a
I-
little premature.
Well, I would say your average, and I can go audit the last couple larger jobs we've done, the average change order is not $100,000. The average change order is probably well less than that, because it's an open book process, so she's gonna get a change order one day for $500, the next day she's gonna get a change order for $50,000,
I
right?
think we keep it at where it's proposed, I mean, we're not even, this is informational now, but I want to hear other people's thoughts too. But keep it at now, and then if it comes to the point we're going over, then we'll change it.
What I was trying to get into is give you a range, like what's.
I know, that's,
Yeah.
but he's not able to do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
is it a per contract basis or a total change order of
Per
cumulative?
prime trade agreement.
And it's per item. So let's say in Rob's
Right.
scenario,
So I-
we get the change order, we do the rebar, we do the concrete. 3 weeks later, you know, I really don't like the color of the concrete, so we want to stain it a burgundy. I wouldn't do that. That's a change order, because then they have to inject the paint coloring into the concrete before they pour it. That might be one that, so it's not, you know, if that first change order is $95,000, the second change order can be $6,000, and that's not a violation because they're two separate change orders.
So right now it is at 100,000, is what you're saying?
No,
It's at
that's what I
50.
mean, if this
It's
were in
at
place.
50.
Right now, state laws, anything above 10,000 comes to the board for approval.
But traditionally, Mary, through our past experience of construction projects, repair projects that we have done, did we have a traditionally approved on a certain limit as a change order, especially for that limit that has been approved?
Except for this project, our largest project
Yeah,
before
yeah,
this was
okay.
Maine West at $10 million. So we kept within that 10,000 limit, and we did have one change order that we had to stop, actually two change orders on that project that were above $10,000 that we had to wait for the board to take action on. One was for painting of the spec gym, the other was for additional welding conditions because of a lead-based paint condition.
So,
But it's something we could change at any time.
You can change it at any time if we find that, you know, I mean, I guess the issue is you can change it at any time, but let's say we collect information for June, we don't hold the July meeting,
Yeah, that's,
you
that's
know.
what, I guess what I was
It's
trying to
too
put
late,
Rob on
yeah.
the spot for, Rob, as our construction management firm, if you could pick a number that this would be, what would be-
100 would be the number I would pick.
Okay,
I would not
that's-
have
That's
very.
what
I
I'm
would-
hearing.
Okay, that's-
Linda, you wanted to say
So
something.
this is the thing, I know that time is of the essence, so I don't have a problem with this. But if there were, and plus you're so intimately involved in this, so things are gonna go through you. And you're very good at the checks and balances. But if there was some, if we say yes, but then at our board meetings, if you bring to our attention anything that's significant that had been approved.
Oh, you will get
Right.
you will get a detailed list of all of the change orders, from the $500 to the $89,000 one.
So then we can see that, and if we spot anything that we say, oh,
Correct,
that's crazy,
and that happens.
yeah.
Yeah.
Then
What-
we-
what-
Except the not crazy part, right?
Right.
Yeah.
We'll bring usually an accounting reconciliation of any allowance expenditure, any contingency expenditure, and that'll never get to the board until it's through the process through architect and owner approval. Then it goes to the board, and usually that, right, when you have an allowance contingency, it's a $0 adjustments, you're just reconciling that I'm spending these buckets of money and putting them into these prime trade agreements contracts, right? So it's not a change to the total contract value, it's a change to those prime trades contract value.
But right now you have a 10% contingency, so you have that ceiling, that allowance that you can go up to an increase of up to 10% of what it is.
Of each prime trade, correct.
Right, so I guess since you have that, I think I'm more comfortable kind of like deferring this much later because you have that built in.
So that's not built in.
It's not.
Well, that is the most you can do without rebidding the
Correct.
job.
Okay,
Once you set this dollar value, you cannot approve a change order, even if it's within that 10% contingency. That 10% contingency is a change in the contract value.
okay, all right.
If
If that
it's more than
makes sense.
10%, then it's like a rebid.
Correct.
You have to rebid.
So we'll vote on this at the April board meeting in whatever capacity takes place. As of right now, we're keeping the numbers adjusted in this informational, and we'll review it as needed.
Yes.
Do I have a motion for number 4, approval of e-learning program?
So moved. Second.
Okay, as we just heard all about that at the public hearing right previous to this meeting. Are there any questions or thoughts?
Austriaco?
Aye.
Collins? Coyle?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Bessler?
Aye. Okay, as we move into number 5, approval of bids and awarding of contracts, we're going to start out with an overall presentation on everything that's involved. We have items A through Z, so it's going to be very comprehensive. We're going to get a lot of nice overview at the beginning. I would ask everyone to pay rapt attention to that and let us move quickly and thoroughly through each of our items tonight and make sure that we don't get mired in one too much and that we kind of move it succinctly. And we can start with, do I have a motion for 5A, approval of bid and awarding the contracts? Actually, do I have a motion for 5A, bid package 6 demolition, A2 recommendation, and A3 recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we're going to start with a summary and overview of what we look like as comparison to budget for bid period 1. So if you flip in your board packet to the chart labeled Exhibit A, Executive Summary.
Looks like this.
Oh, I like this. Presentation, very helpful, thank you.
Yep, very simple, bunch, 5 or 6 numbers. You got that, Terry?
No.
Sorry. It's all right. Let me take it.
It's all yours.
So what we have here is broken down Main East, Main South, Main West by trade. So what I'll start with before we get into the award rec is what's not in this that'll be coming to the board in April 20th? What do we say? April?
Six.
Sixth, thank you. So we pushed out plumbing to a later bid package, we pushed out roofing to a later bid package. Moving, we also pushed out to a later bid package. And then we had one.
Ceramic tile?
Ceramic tile and carpet we are reviewing, as well as sports flooring. So we pushed some things out for purpose of a better bid environment or further review of material selection. Really nothing critical path, nothing scary, nothing besides a little bit more review and looking to get a little better coverage from the market. So this executive summary tells you base bid, so when we total all the contracts, not including the ones we just talked about, Main East is $24.2 million, Main South 22.6. That's all the prime trade contracts combined up and summarized. And then we really had a slew of alternates we looked at, none of them very appealing except two things at Main South, which is an operable partition, which is a movable, flexible wall in one classroom that gives us the ability to do a couple things with that classroom, and also acoustical metal deck at the dining room addition at Main South. So this is an enhancement where we're going to basically pop up the roof of the courtyard area. It's an acoustical treatment to the metal deck to give it so it's not so noisy of a space. So it was a really good value, good price point, so we decided that was a good alternate. And it was an acoustical recommendation through White's consultant. So then that is the top, so that summarizes the total to a $65 million, 502,000. So that's the total, the prime trade contract agreements that are up for approval by the board today. And then below that, you have a list of kind of allowances and contingencies. So total scope and unassigned allowances are placeholders we've identified that we believe we have a gap or an unforeseen condition or a known condition that we've identified almost a separate dollar value for, so that we're not kind of calling it a true contingency value, right? It's a known item to us. So we have a list we've vetted through with the district already, and that is that $5.3 million. And then you have trade-specific allowances. For example, we go into existing schools every year and have existing electrical conduit above the ceiling. Really probably needs to get relocated if we're going to put new ductwork in. The engineers would spend way too much time and money trying to identify every single conduit. So that's a pot of money we'll put next to our electrical line and say, hey, we know we're going to spend about $25,000 probably in these areas just moving electrical wiring from space to space. So that's really that second line of trade-specific allowances. And then the last line is really true contingency. So this is what we call, when we look at the different trade packages, we say demolition, let's assume we're gonna need 5% of true contingency on top of that. Whereas we get to a sports flooring where it's a really clean, so we say maybe we take 2.5% contingency on that line. So we go line by line and not just do, let's just call it 10% or let's just call it 5%. So some thought has gone into each one of those contingency and allowance lines to get to where they're at today. And it was a long discussion. I think it was a good process to go a little further than just say, oh, let's take 10% and go through it. So that gets you a total value at this point of $76,959,000. And really, we review that against our control estimate for this same package, and we're roughly $400,000 under budget currently, which is a good sign. Remember, we still have to bid plumbing, roofing, moving, vet ceramic tile, vet sports flooring at Main East, and vet carpet. And we have another phase 2 bid period that White is already working on. So good start, long way to go. So, and what we'll do when we get to the end of the summer, the first summer, so really two things. Most importantly is at the end of summer 1, we'll look, what did we really spend in contingencies and allowances and audit that so that we can adjust moving forward. And then 2, we've asked for accounting breakdown of the bids received to date so we can use those to extrapolate what does the rest of the renovation cost look like in each school? And really use that as real-time numbers to identify the balance of our expenditures. So I personally felt pretty good knowing we came in under. That means in theory, our number for phase two should work out pretty well. But then again, we're still gonna go through the same process. White's gonna draw it, we're gonna price it before we go out on the street, and that therefore we should have a better understanding as the next set of drawings come across. So that is this executive summary. We have a couple spots in here, if you look at the bid tab where we have lower than normal coverage, that's always a big deal with every Board of Education is, well, how many bids did we get? How many coverage? So we had a couple, for example, metal panels. We had one bidder, low risk work. It is metal panels, it's very busy, so it's an exterior of Main West. There's one piece of facade that is metal panel, and we have plenty of time.